I'm so happy to be back with you guys today, and I'm coming in with a fall recipe for you today. I know we've been in fall for a few weeks already, so I'm a bit behind, but I thought there's no excuse to make the best pumpkin spice cinnamon buns. I mean, cinnamon buns or cinnamon rolls, however you want to call them, are my favorite dessert of all time. I crave them all the time. Morning, lunch, night, whenever. If there's cinnamon buns around, I'm for them. So I thought, why not use a recipe of someone who I follow a lot. Her name is Chell Sweets. I'll link the recipe below in the description. And this recipe makes the softest light. It's like a cloud in your mouth. So it's really, really good. And I'm so excited to share the recipe with you today. So there are a few steps to this recipe. So we'll break it down to make it as simple as possible. So the first step will be preparing the dough. The second step will be rolling out the dough and spreading it with all that cinnamon pumpkin spice goodness in the center, rolling them up. And the third step will be obviously baking them. Finally, the last step will be pouring our beautiful glaze over top. So by breaking it down this way, it just makes it maybe simpler and easier to follow along. All right, so we'll go ahead and get right into step one, which is the preparation of the dough. For this recipe, you will need 4 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. You'll also need a 1/2 cup on the side that we're going to use in case later. You're going to need a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, a 1/2 cup of unsalted butter, a 1/2 cup of pumpkin puree. You want to make sure it's only pumpkin, nothing else in the ingredients. You want 2 packs of instant yeast, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 whole egg, and 1 cup of whole milk. All right, so here I have my 4 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, to which I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of salt. And I'm gonna add 2 packs of instant yeast. I'm just gonna whisk this together so that everything is incorporated. There you go. I'm just gonna set this aside. And now we're gonna go and work on our wet ingredients. So we have our milk here, to which we're gonna add our pumpkin puree. Just like so. And we're also going to add our sugar as well as our butter. So I'm just gonna stir this actually before putting the butter in, just to get everything kind of mixed together and incorporated. I'm wondering now if my measuring cup is maybe too small. So as you may know, in order to activate yeast, we do need our liquids to be warm. We don't want it to be hot, we want it to be warm. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pop this in the microwave for 1 minute. I wanna make sure that my butter's melted fully, and I wanna make sure, like I said, that it's warm and not burning. Because if it's burning, the yeast, seeing as though it's active, you can like kill the yeast and then it won't rise properly. So we really want to make sure this is the perfect temperature. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop this in the microwave for 1 minute and then we'll readjust afterwards. All right, so my wet ingredients are ready to go. There's barely a bit of butter left that hasn't melted, but it's gonna be melting in the next few seconds. I'm not too worried about it. I don't wanna put it back in the microwave because I feel that it is warm enough as is. I'm just gonna go ahead and grab my dry ingredients that we've mixed earlier, and I'm gonna add these into my stand mixer fitted with the hook attachment. Do your best to not miss it like I did. Okay, so you want to go ahead and slowly incorporate your wet ingredients while the stand mixer is running on medium speed. And you're going to see the dough starting to form, so that's always fun. So once you've added all the wet ingredients, you want to turn your stand mixer off and you want to give it a scrape with your spatula just to make sure that everything is well incorporated. This off. And I'm just gonna scrape the edges down. Perfect. Once that's done, we're gonna add the egg in and we're gonna put it back on medium speed. At this point, we wanna see the dough come together. So initially the egg is gonna have a hard time being mixed into the dough, but just trust the process, let it go. So at this point, you see the dough starting to come together and it will be sticking to the edges. So this is where the excess flour is gonna come into play. You can add 1 tablespoon at a time with your stand mixer running until you get the consistency that we're looking for. So we do want the dough to be kind of tacky, but we don't want it to be sticking and uneasy to work with or hard to work with. And every time you add flour in, you really want to let the flour get incorporated. So you just want to do this until you see that the dough is naturally unsticking from the sides. All right, so this has been going for about 2 to 3 minutes, and the way to test to see if your dough is kneaded enough and if there's enough flour in it is to take a clean finger, touch the dough. If nothing glues to your finger, so if you don't have any dough on your finger, then you're good to go, but you want it to be still a bit tacky. So at this point, what you want to do, you want to cover your dough and let it sit for 10 to 20 minutes to get that yeast activated. Now that our dough is resting, I like to use this time to make the filling for our beautifully delicious pumpkin spice cinnamon rolls. Let's get started on step 2. For the filling, we will need a half cup of butter. Here I have salted butter, a half cup of pumpkin puree again, 3/4 cups of brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of cornstarch, and for the spices, I've used 2 teaspoons of pumpkin spice and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. All right, so the first thing I like to do is just go ahead and melt my butter. I find it just makes it so much easier to get everything mixed together. My butter is now melted, so what I like to do, I like to combine this to our brown sugar. I'm also going to add in my half cup of pumpkin puree. And to that, we are going to add our cinnamon and our pumpkin spice blend. I prefer adding a bit more cinnamon just because at the end of the day, these still stay cinnamon buns. That's still what we're making. We're just making a fall version of them. So I do want the cinnamon flavor to be a bit more present than the other spices like clove, nutmeg, ginger, allspice. I really want cinnamon to be at the forefront, but I still want those other warm spices there. And we're also gonna add in 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. I just like using a fork because it helps break up the brown sugar and you smell the spices right away. It's so exciting. And the cornstarch in this situation is gonna act like a thickener. So the addition of the pumpkin puree will not make our cinnamon buns watery. So we're gonna get that nice gooey texture that we want. It's a beautiful creamy paste full of sugar and spices and pumpkin and deliciousness. So I'm just gonna set this aside and it'll be ready to go when we're ready to spread it over our beautifully fluffy dough. I could already tell that the dough has risen. So I'm just gonna remove it here and I'm going to be working directly on my counter. So if you're doing that, you just wanna make sure that you've cleaned it properly. So what I usually do, I just go ahead and put a bit of flour directly on my working surface because you don't want it to stick to your counter. And I have my rolling pin here and I also like to flour the rolling pin just a bit. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get this dough out of our bowl. So I just like to use a spatula and turn it right out. There you go. You feel it when it kind of loosens itself. So at this point, you don't want to work the dough too much. You just kind of want to spread it out. And what we're looking for is a 14 by 18 rectangle. So I think that is as good as it's gonna get. Also, you guys can hear my oven. I just remembered what I like doing because my condo here gets really, really cold. So what I like doing for the next proofing process, I like preheating my oven at 200 Fahrenheit. And then right before I'm about to put the cinnamon buns in, I turn the oven off. So at this point, we are not looking to cook the buns. We're just looking to get them into a warm environment for them to rise even more. So if your house or your kitchen is warm enough as is, you don't need to put them in the oven. But because our apartment here is quite cold, I just like creating a warm environment for them to rise in. And the second proofing process is about a 30-minute rise. So once you get your dough rolled out, you're gonna go and get your filling that has thickened beautifully, as you can see. And we're just gonna spread this all around. And this filling is where all the flavor is. So you really want to make sure to get all of it. Don't waste any of it. It would be so unfortunate because it's so good. So once you've gotten it all on, you could go ahead and spread it. Spread it as evenly as you can. And it might seem like much, but that's all the goodness, right? That's all the flavor of our buns. So you really want it to be a generous amount. So I am using Chel Sweet's recipe, but I did modify it a teensy bit. So if you guys do go ahead and access her recipe, you might notice that there are some slight changes to it. So now we are going to go ahead and roll our dough up. So you just want to start from the edge that is closest to you and just slightly turn it on itself. And you want to be gentle, right? There's no point in going too fast. And you just want to pick up and fold over. Pick up and fold over. All right, guys, so we're now at the point where we're gonna go ahead and cut our cinnamon buns. There are a few different ways that you can go ahead and cut them. You can use a knife, but I just think it's not very practical because you do often end up smushing your cinnamon roll. So the two best ways I like to cut the rolls are either with thread or with floss. If you are using dental floss, make sure to use one that isn't mint flavored. So try to find one that doesn't have a flavor at all. Otherwise, you might have a minty aftertaste to your cinnamon buns. Today I'm using thread because I didn't have any unflavored floss at home. So you just take a piece of thread. Because it is a bit thinner than floss, you might need to double up because you don't want it to break. So at this point what you do, okay, you just want to bring it down under your dough and jimmy it towards the center. You want to pull up and cut right through. So we've got two logs that are approximately the same size, and we're looking to get 12 buns out of here. So you want to get 6 out of each of these. So we're just going to go ahead again. All right, so once your buns are all cut up and into your 9x13 pan, you can go ahead and pop them in the oven. That's what I'm doing now. But as I mentioned earlier, at this step, we're not cooking them. My oven is actually turned off now. So it preheated to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. I turned it off and I'm gonna pop these in just to get them to proof for another 30 minutes. All right, so my cinnamon rolls have been proofing in the oven for 30 minutes, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I kind of overdid it with the filling. So I was considering maybe like starting over, like behind the scenes, and trying to get it as perfect as possible, but you know what, I decided that that's part of the fun. So as many times as you make a recipe, you know, it happens that every once in a while it doesn't turn out, or every once in a while you overdo the filling because you love it so much. So that's what happened in my case. So you can see that here it's kind of oozing out. But the good thing about cinnamon buns is that there's a glaze that goes over top or a frosting of some sort. So it's gonna be hidden. So I'm still positive that these are gonna be freaking amazing. But I just wanted to let you guys know that, you know, it's common to not have perfection every time you bake, and the important part is doing it because you love it and it makes you feel good. Anyways, so now that they have proofed for the second time, I have set my oven to 375 Fahrenheit, and we're gonna go ahead and bake these for 20 to 25 minutes until they look perfectly golden brown. So I'm just gonna wait for my oven to beep, and then I'll put these right in. While they're in the oven, I'll show you guys how to make that final glaze. For the glaze, you will need a 1/4 cup of salted butter, 2 cups of powdered sugar, 3 tablespoons of whole milk, and my favorite ingredient, vanilla extract. All right, guys, so as you can see, the cinnamon buns are now out of the oven. They have come up so high and are so huge, and the whole apartment smells so good, so I'm really, really pleased with them. And now we're gonna go ahead to our final step, which is preparing the glaze that'll go on top. In this recipe, Chelsea decides to go for more of a glaze, so it's more like of a thinner frosting, and in this case, there's no cream cheese. So if you prefer a cream cheese frosting, by all means, go ahead and slather that on. It's gonna be amazing, but I just wanted to try out Chelsea's recipe really as is. So we're gonna start off with the butter here. So with the whisk, you just wanna whisk up your butter, which should be room temperature, and you just wanna add in the milk. Just like so. And here I always use a spatula to try to help me along, otherwise all the butter gets stuck in the whisk. Then you can go ahead and add your vanilla. Just like so. I always eyeball it, but it's probably about a teaspoon or 2. So you just want to mix that in. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and add the powdered sugar. You can also just add everything into the bowl and do it in a stand mixer or by hand. I mean, the important thing is that all the ingredients come together. So you wanna whip this up till it gets all nice and creamy like so. At this point, if you wanna stick in, you know, the fall theme, you can always sub out some of the milk with maple syrup to make it like a maple pumpkin spice cinnamon bun, which sounds delicious, but today I just kept it simple. So now we're gonna come over to our buns that have been out for about 10 minutes, and we're just gonna pour this all over top. There you go, so you can just spread that out. And that's basically it. There you have your pumpkin spice cinnamon buns. Here is a close-up, guys, of what these look like. Look at it. And the frosting or the glaze is kind of soaked into the bun. And look how fluffy and delicious these look. They're like clouds. Oh man, these are gonna be so good. All right, guys, so there you have it, the best ever pumpkin spice cinnamon rolls. As you can tell, there's a bite missing because I couldn't contain myself. So please go ahead and give these a try. They are delightful. You're not gonna regret it. And if you do try them out, please leave a comment and let me know what you think of them. Also, if you have any suggestions on upcoming videos that you would like to see, please, once again, just leave a comment below. Have a great day. Bye. All right, guys, so here's a piece that I just took out, and look at how soft. Look at that. Oh my God, if that's not to die for, I don't know what is.